In 1859, a seemingly trivial incident sparked a tense confrontation between two global powers. The San Juan Islands, a small cluster of islands in the Pacific Northwest, became the center of a heated dispute between the United States and Great Britain, one that could have led to a war. The cause? A pig. This bizarre chapter in history would become known as the Pig War, a conflict where diplomacy rather than bloodshed would ultimately preserve peace. But how did a single pig escalate tensions between two nations on the brink of a devastating clash? To understand this, we have to rewind. The origins of this conflict date back several decades to the settlement of the Pacific Northwest. The United States and Great Britain had been disputing the boundary between their territories for much of the 19th century. And while they had tried to resolve it through treaties, the devil had always been in the details. The Oregon Treaty of 1846 had established the 49th parallel as the dividing line between British Canada and the US territories, but the language was vague when it came to the water channels in the region. The treaty referred to a channel separating Vancouver Island from the mainland, the Haro Strait, which was closer to Vancouver Island, and the Rosario Strait, which was closer to the US main island. The San Juan Islands lie between the two, with both sides claiming the islands based on their interpretation of the treaty. Tensions quickly flared. The roots of the dispute of San Juan Island itself were laid in the early 1850s. In 1851, the Hudson's Bay Company, which represented British interests, set up a salmon curing station on the island's western shoreline. By 1853, the company had established a highly profitable sheep farm at Bellevue, expanding its flock from 1,369 sheep to over 4,500 in just 6 years. Meanwhile, American settlers had also staked claims to the San Juan Islands, with settlers arriving as early as 1853. By 1859, roughly 18 Americans had settled on the island, claiming that the land was part of Washington territory. The British saw these Americans as squatters, and the situation was becoming more tense with each passing year. In fact, American settlers were hoping that the US government would recognize their claims, but the British dismissed them as trespassers. Then, on June 15, 1859, a seemingly small event triggered the crisis that would nearly ignite the war. Lyman Cutler, an American farmer, had had enough of a pig belonging to Charles Griffin, a British employee of the Hudson's Bay Company, rooting through his vegetable garden. The pig had already caused damage before, and this time Cutler decided to shoot it. It was a tension that would turn into an international incident. Griffin demanded compensation for the loss of his pig, but Cutler only offered $10, which Griffin found unacceptable. When Cutler refused to pay more, Griffin reported the incident to British authorities, claiming that the American farmer was a trespasser. British officials were quick to act, threatening to arrest Cutler. In response, American military commanders took action. The stage was set for a showdown. On July 27, 1859, Captain George E. Pickett, later famous for his role in the Civil War, led 64 US soldiers to San Juan Island to defend the American settlers. They landed near Griffin Bay, just north of Bellevue Sheep Farm, and began to establish a military presence. In retaliation, the British sent a 31-gun steam HMS Tribune under Captain Jeffrey Hornby, accompanied by 2 more warships. Their mission was clear: dislodge the Americans. British forces arrived in full force. By the end of August, they had amassed over 1,000 men and several warships. Tensions were escalating rapidly as the Americans reinforced their positions, bringing the total number of US soldiers on the island to more than 400, with 8 cannons ready to defend the settlers. The military buildup had the island buzzing with anticipation, and an armed conflict seemed inevitable. But the things weren't quite as heated as they seemed. While soldiers from both sides trained their guns and prepared for a fight, British and American officers found moments of calm amid the crisis. Officers from both nations socialized, attending church services together and even enjoying whiskey and cigars in private homes. Despite the looming threat of a war, these shared moments of civility and camaraderie helped to de-escalate the situation. British Captain Jeffrey Hornby, under pressure to take action, wisely chose to wait for orders from a superior, Rear Admiral Robert L. Baines. When Rear Admiral Baines arrived in late August, he was shocked by the growing tension. He immediately ordered a halt to any further escalation. Appalled by the possibility of a war over a simple dispute of a pig, Baines told Governor James Douglas, "I will not involve 2 great nations in a war over squabble about a pig." His calm leadership made all the difference as he and Douglas began negotiations. By October, the conflict had reached Washington, D.C. President James Buchanan, alarmed by the potential for a war, sent General Winfield Scott, the commander of the U.S. Army, to mediate the situation. Scott was a seasoned diplomat, having helped resolve border disputes in the past. After arriving in San Juan in October, Scott quickly made contact with Governor Douglas and began working to cool tensions. Scott proposed that both sides withdraw their reinforcements and leave a token military presence. Under his guidance, both nations agreed to a joint military occupation of the island, with each country country maintaining a small force. By November 1859, the two sides had agreed to share the control of San Juan Island until a permanent resolution could be reached. This arrangement would last for 12 years. For over a decade, British and American forces coexisted on San Juan Island. The joint occupation was a rare example of diplomacy over war. Meanwhile, the US was embroiled in its own civil war, but despite the ongoing tensions, the island remained a neutral zone. However, a final resolution was still needed. In 1871, the United States and Great Britain turned to Kaiser Wilhelm I of Germany to help resolve the issue. The Kaiser organized a three-man arbitration commission, which convened in Geneva, Switzerland, to examine the case. After nearly a year of deliberations, the commission ruled in favor of the United States, declaring the San Juan Islands to be part of the U.S. territory. On October 21, 1872, the Arbitration Commission's decision was announced, and British forces withdrew from the island. By November 25, 1872, the last British soldiers left San Juan Island, and U.S. control was established. The long-standing dispute was finally resolved, and the boundary between the U.S. and Canada was officially set. Today, the San Juan Islands stand as a peaceful testament to diplomacy. The Pig War, as strange as it was, ended without a shot being fired, and the legacy of his remarkable standoff lives on. San Juan Island National Historical Park commemorates the peaceful resolution of a conflict that could have torn two nations apart. In the end, it was reason and dialogue, not violence, that triumphed. What do you think of the Pig War and its unusual resolution? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and if you like these kind of videos, make sure to subscribe for more timeless tales. Thanks for watching.